Hi everyone. Today we're going to take a look at how to set up a graph. So the first thing we need to do when we have a graph is mostly we want to start with graph paper like I've started you with here. The next thing is we need to figure out where do we want to start our graph. Where we start our graph is the point of 0, 0. This has like a mathematical term called the origin. And usually we'll pick a spot at the lower left side of the page, like there, to be our starting point. So we're just going to put a little dot on there, and we're going to call that our origin, and that's our 0, 0. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is set up our axes. We're going to set up the y-axis, which goes up and down the page. And we've got nice grid lines there, but we're probably just going to use a ruler and make a nice dark line on that. And there we go. So that's our y-axis, and that goes up and down. So we're going to label that with a little y at the top, just to keep track. Perfect. And I'll maybe write that a little bit lower just so you can see it on the frame. Perfect. And going left to right, we're going to do the x-axis. And we're going to draw that in too. Okay, so you guys have probably all done this before, but I just wanted to make sure that you guys have in mind that the y-axis goes top to bottom on the page and the x-axis goes left to right. And we have our 0, 0 point, which we call our origin. Perfect. The next thing we need to do is we need to set up a scale. The scale is the numbers that we're going to put on the sides of the graph, which are going to tell us where we're going to put our points. Now, there's a few goals. So when we put a scale on, we want to take as much of the room, like we want to use as much of the paper as we can. The idea is if we use as much paper as we can, our graph is going to be bigger, and the bigger the graph is, the easier it is to read and work with. We don't want our graph all scrunched up in the corner. So in this case, on the y-axis, I'm going to go up by ones. So like every line will represent 1. I'm not going to write every single thing because sometimes that gets a little bit, it gets a little messy when you write every single number. It gets a little hard to read. So I'm going to write every other number. So I go up 1, that's 1, then there's 2, and I'm going to write 2, then 3, and I'll write 4, and 5, and 6, 7, 8, 9, and 10. And I'm going to keep going in this fashion. 11, then 11, 12, 13, 14, and 15, and 16 will be at the top. Okay, and see, we've chosen a nice scale because that stretches everything out, and that pretty much uses our whole paper. Now, if I did the same thing on the x-axis, the graph's going to be kind of squished up because I have a lot wider paper than it is. The paper's wider than it is tall. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to write 1 every like 4 lines. So I'm going to start at 0 and go over, over, over 1, over, over, over 2, over, over, over 3, over, over, over 4, and the same thing, so over, over, over 5. All right, so now what we've done with this scale is we've created a nice graph where we can start plotting points, and we've taken up as much space as possible. Let's take a look at the pop problem so we can start graphing some points. So basically in this case, we have a delivery service, and the delivery service charges $2 per can of pop, plus $4 as like a flat delivery fee. So before we can really plot these points, we need to label our axes. So in this case, our x-axis, those right now are just numbers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, but that actually represents cans of pop. So I'm going to sort of write that There, it might be a little low to see on camera, so I'm actually just going to write cans of pop just to the right of the X. There we go. And on the y-axis, that's actually going to be the total cost. So I'm just going to write total cost. Okay, so now our graph has a lot more meaning. We have cans of pop along the bottom and total cost along the side. So we've already created a table of values, just so it'll be easier for us to plot some points now. So if we take a look, each of these points, each of these like sets of values represents a point we can plot. So for example, our first one here, for 0 cans of pop, that's going to cost $4. The reason it is because 0 times 2 cans, right? $2 a can. So that's 0 plus your delivery fee of 4 costs 4. So that's like $4 for no cans of pop. So what we're going to do is we're going to choose a color. Since we've written this on a blue Post-it note, we'll use a blue marker. And we're going to start at 0 because that's how many cans of pop. And we're going to put a point on the 4 because that's how much it costs. Let's look at our next point we're going to plot. At 1 can of pop, it costs us $6. So we're going to find 1 along the bottom there, 1 can of pop. And it's important that we're like actually marking on the line. It's not the spaces in between, it's like right on the line. So we're going to go 1 can of pop and we go all the way up to 6 and we put another dot there. This is also why it's important that we keep our spacing consistent, right? We want to make sure that the space between our numbers on our scale is consistent so that it gives us a nice even spread of data. And the next one we're going to look at is 2. If we look at 2 cans of pop, $8. So we locate 2 on the x-axis and we go up, 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 up until we find 8 and we hammer a point there. Perfect. And as you can see, we can just keep continuing to plot these points and we'll end up with our line in our graph. So if you need any more help graphing or if you want to finish graphing this, that's something you can consult with your teacher. Okay, so let's look at our next point. Our next point is 3, and for 3 cans of pop, that's $10. So we find 3 on our x-axis. We go all the way up to 10. And we pop down a point there. And our last point that we're going to graph is 4, and that gives us $12. So we're going to put one more point there. And now we're going to just connect all these points with a nice straight line. It's best to probably use a straight edge or a ruler if you can, and just connect them all together. And now we've created, from our situation, right, we had our pop delivery situation, we've now turned that into a graph. And we have a line graph that represents our equation.